More help is on the way for 2024. We'll talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. And Josh, the Oklahoma Sooners got some interesting news on Monday. It's Monday that we're recording, Tuesday in which you're watching this. But the Oklahoma Sooners got some great news. They added another tight end through the transfer portal, one Jake Roberts. Jake Roberts comes to Oklahoma after having spent some time with the University of North Texas and then Baylor, now with the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, it's obviously great news for Oklahoma. They supplement a position group that they need somebody that has played some college football. 23 grabs, 231 yards, and a touchdown a year ago. Obviously, many of us are familiar with Jake Roberts because he is from Norman, played at Norman North, and obviously his initial college path took him elsewhere. So he's happily welcomed back, someone that's a veteran in his collegiate career. And, oh, by the way, he brings you some stability in the here and now. And, oh, by the way, it might also land you a high-profile younger brother, too.
Yeah, we'll get to how the 2025 recruiting connection might help Oklahoma. But on Jake Roberts alone, so it's an experienced guy that you add to the room, somebody who's familiar with Seth Luttrell, committed to the University of North Texas out of high school, spent 3 years with the Mean Green before going to Baylor. You look at the numbers and 23 grabs, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. The yardage isn't very high, but that was fourth on the team for Baylor last year in receiving. So pretty solid given what Baylor's offense was in 2023. The other aspect that you want to look at is just his ability as a blocker. He was one of the better pass blocking tight ends in college football last year, ranked, I believe it was 15th in the nation among tight ends that had, about 274 blocking snaps. And then his run blocking grade was better than average. We'll just put it that way. It was good. It wasn't among the top graded players according to Pro Football Focus, but he was good. So you add that element to your tight end room. And then again, you add an experienced guy that you can throw out there. He can be your starter and you feel pretty good about what you got. Even if he's not the most dynamic receiving weapon that you have in your arsenal, similar to kind of Austin Stogner, you're going to get at least a solid floor out of him. If not, maybe even a little bit better than Stogner because he's going to be a better run blocker, I think, than what Stogner provided. And I just think, he's not got the same injury history that's going to limit him in the pass catching game. And it allows you time to develop your young tight end group that obviously is going to be really, really good. But, we haven't seen a whole lot of Caden Helms. We haven't seen much Cade McIntyre. And then Devon Mitchell, obviously, that's the big name coming in the 2024 class that everybody's expecting to kind of revitalize the tight end position for the Sooners. Again, he's a true freshman. Could he come in and be a dynamic player right away for the Sooners? 100%. I'm not going to say he can't. At the same time, if he's not available, if he's not ready to be that guy year one, you don't have to throw him out there and say, nope, you got to be our guy. No, with Jake Roberts, with Bauer Sharp, you got two experienced tight ends that you can platoon and feel good about at the position.
And then the young trio, obviously Devon Mitchell, who you touched on, but Caden Helms, who is a year older now, Cade McIntyre, who again will be a little bit older. So Caden Helms, Cade McIntyre, Devon Mitchell, and then a couple of older heads in the room in Jake Roberts and Bauer Sharp. And Roberts, man, he physically looks the part, just the measurables of a SEC of a Power 5 tight end, 6'5", 248. I'll go ahead and give him the pair of extra cheeseburgers and round up to 250 for him. So he's legitimate Power 5 tight end physically, and obviously has a nice little history. Not explosive receiving production, but production, right? Some 50 odd catches over the last couple of years, and a little bit north of 600 yards and a couple of touchdowns too. So this experience is good for Oklahoma. It rounds out that collection in the tight end room for them with, again, a couple of older guys that have been around college football to mix in with that younger trio.
And the older brother of Nate Roberts, the 2025 four-star tight end that Oklahoma and everybody in college football wants to get on their team. Originally, Nate Roberts was committed to Notre Dame, backed off that commitment, and we've seen several predictions come in favoring the Oklahoma Sooners, but it's been some time since there's been a whole lot of buzz on that. Now, still really early in the 2025 cycle with a year till the early signing period and National Signing Day. So a lot could change, a lot could happen. The addition of Jake Roberts doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get Nate Roberts, but having a guy in the building that gives you a little bit of insight. Okay, what is it like day to day? It could confirm some things for Nate Roberts, but the familial connection at Oklahoma, it has to make somewhat of a difference in the Sooners' favor, I would imagine.
Oh, there's no doubt that it does. I will speak just from personal experience that's part of the reason I wound up at OU. And I'm sure that is not a unique story to myself or others. So yes, if you've got mom or dad on staff, if you've got a brother or sister on campus, it doesn't hurt your chances. So, but in the here and now, it obviously, the recruiting front, it could be substantial there with Nate, but just for Oklahoma's room for next season, it's a big time pickup for OU.
Now, this will be, Jake Roberts' fifth season of college football coming up in 2024. I'm not sure exactly if he's going to be a grad transfer. Did you hear that or not?
I would imagine that he would be, just given the age.
Yeah, and then there's always the potential to have a COVID year in there, so the eligibility stuff is all kind of weird. But it's not for sure that he'll be on campus at the same time that Nate Roberts would be on campus. But at least, again, as Nate comes to visit, there's going to be a friendly face there in the tight end room for him to visit with, and someone, again, kind of being able to feed him the information, like, okay, what's it like during a practice? What's a Schmitty workout really like? How's Joe John and Seth Luttrell in the meeting rooms? How does the offense feature the tight end? What's all that going to look like? So all of that information, it can't hurt Oklahoma, I don't think. But again, it's just a matter of continuing to recruit, selling the kid on what could be a great fit for him with the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because ultimately there's probably without totally knowing the eligibility situation, and it always gets a little wonky anymore because of the COVID thing. Good chance that Jake, I guess, wouldn't be here when Nate initially would be, if that comes to pass. But for the recruitment portion of it, and just as you alluded to there, the bouncing ideas off of one another of, hey, this is what it's like. Yes, Brent Venables is somebody you want to come play for. Yes, Joe John Finley is somebody you want to come play for. And I already know and have been telling you, Seth Luttrell is somebody you want to come play for. So it doesn't hurt. Yeah, absolutely. We'll continue to follow both the recruitment and see what Oklahoma continues to do in the transfer portal. We're still waiting on some insights, some news on several players that Oklahoma's targeting. We'll see where it all ends up as they get enrolled. Winter workouts are about to get going as well. So the season is over. Winter workouts are going to get started. We're going to be in spring ball before we know it. And the 2025 recruiting class is going to be a big part of our conversation here on Locked On Sooners. But coming up next, again, Oklahoma got great news in the returns of a couple of players for 2024. We'll talk about that here on Locked On Sooners coming up after the break. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for just that, for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics, such as amoxicillin, right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds scary. Well, it is. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than my fiance, Amanda, or for John, one of his kids, I'm sure, getting sick. That's a scary thing. And you don't want that supply chain issue to keep your kids or your loved ones from life-saving medication that they need. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case, it's a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, and a bunch of others. This stuff, believe me, it could happen to any one of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. Never been more important than to be prepared than, well, right now, today. Go to jasemedical.com, use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order.
Also on Monday, the Oklahoma Sooners got some great news in that Jalil Farooq is returning for 2024, and Trace Ford is also returning for 2024, the defensive end that transferred from Oklahoma State to Oklahoma to play in 2023. First, let's talk about Jalil Farooq. I know the Alamo Bowl leaves a bit of a sour taste in everybody's mouth as it regards Jalil Farooq. The dude is a player, though. He is a playmaker. He can make plays after the catch. He's one of those utility players that can do a lot of things for you, both on offense and on special teams. I think this is really good news, especially given that, okay, Angelo Anthony is coming back, but we don't know if he's going to be available for the start of the regular season in 2024, given that his ACL injury occurred in the Red River rivalry. Obviously, the recovery times have shrinked and they've gotten faster as it regards ACL, but in the event that he's not available, this is just another veteran piece to add to your wide receiver room in Jalil Farooq, and somebody that you can bump into the slot to replace Drake Stoops, or at least platoon with some other guys at the slot, so that you've got some really dynamic weapons out there. Does he need to improve his ball security? 100%. That's going to be something that he and Emmett Jones, I'm sure, work on quite a bit this offseason to get him better prepared and better able to secure the ball this next year. But I think it's just huge news. One, that they're getting a guy back that was third on your team in receiving yards, that can do a lot of different things in your offense, and could have gone to the NFL. He could have transferred. And yet you're adding that player back to your locker room, adding that player back to your depth chart. I think it's a very under the radar level of importance, how big it is that you're getting these upperclassmen to return for one more year. That's huge for your depth chart, man. Absolutely huge.
Well, yes, the Alamo Bowl and the pair of fumbles, it'll loom large. It'll leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth as we head into the offseason here, John. But it shouldn't be the only thought about Jalil Farooq. Here's somebody that's played a lot of football, incredibly experienced for OU, and oh, by the way, was second on the team in receptions behind Drake Stoops with 45. He was third in receiving yards with 694, and again, has a ton of production over his Oklahoma career. So you don't turn your nose up at Jalil Farooq coming back to Oklahoma, adding just one more experienced, proven weapon in this receiving core. And even after the one mistake, clearly Oklahoma has enough confidence in Jalil Farooq that they went back to him in the Alamo Bowl. And ultimately, okay, there was another mistake behind it, but that I think speaks a little bit to how Emmett Jones, how Seth Luttrell, how Oklahoma feels about Jalil Farooq. They know that he's a big-time playmaker for them, and let's hope that the fumbleitis, they can get rid of that.
Yeah, I go back to the Texas game, and were it not for Jalil Farooq, who knows if Oklahoma wins that game. That was the most receiving yards he had all season long. He had 5 catches for 130 yards. He made 2 big plays in that game, first at the end of the first half. I mean, he made several big plays, but 2 of them that led to Oklahoma scoring points. One was at the end of the first half where he had a 34-yard catch and run, set Oklahoma up in field goal range, and Oklahoma gets 3 points out of it. And then at the end of the game, as Oklahoma's trying to go win the game, has another big-time catch and run, makes a guy miss, gets Oklahoma into Texas territory with more than a minute left on the clock. Obviously, Drake Stoops was also huge on that drive, and Dylan Gabriel finding Nick Anderson in the corner was huge as well. But Jalil Farooq played a big role in Oklahoma winning that game as well. So, and the dude just seems like a really good teammate. I know I've seen it, mentioned on social media as well, that he had an opportunity to transfer to follow his good buddy Caleb Williams to USC after Lincoln Riley left. Didn't do it. He's had multiple opportunities where he could have transferred to go somewhere and be quote unquote the guy, but he's just a good teammate. You never hear about him complaining about his role. You never hear him or see him frustrated out there on the field or the sidelines about how many targets he's not getting. No, the guy just comes and plays football and wants to be at Oklahoma. How could you not love that? So shout out to number 3, Double OQ, as he's also known. Glad you're back. Excited to add him to a wider, have him in a wide receiver core that features him, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, Deion Burks, the returning Angelo Anthony, Brennan Thompson, Gavin Freeman, Jaquays Petaway, and then that 2025 signing class that is just really, really good. I mean, you've got a really good group of wide receivers taking you into the SEC that Jackson Arnold can rely upon. And I think that's the other element of this that's absolutely huge. Now for Trace Ford, you lose Rondo Bothroyd, you lose a couple pieces along your defensive line. You've still got some young defensive ends that you're trying to develop, and having another veteran piece as a part of your defensive end rotation, that matters as you work to get PJ Adebaware up to starter level snaps, or R. Mason Thomas up to starter level snaps, or at least becoming significant parts of the rotation in 2024. At the very least, you've got a guy like Trace Ford who can play a lot of football for you. He's been around the block. He knows what he's doing out there on the field, and he was explosive and productive at times for the Sooners. Now, there were often times where they wanted to drop him back into coverage, which was weird, but okay, go for it. He was a flashy player at times for the Sooners. So again, another good piece to add back into your defensive end rotation.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was just the interception and the 26-yard return versus Tulsa, but Trace Ford actually, according to Pro Football Focus, has a great coverage grade. He finished with an 88.7, so that's kind of surprising. But more importantly than that is he played over 330 snaps for Oklahoma. So though the production, you look at it and you say, okay, 18 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, no sacks. Where was the production? I mean, he played a lot for Oklahoma this past season, just in terms of the snap count. So bringing him back into the equation, definitely not anything I think to be upset about. Just one more veteran name that you bring back. I don't know that probably best case he's in a starring role for Oklahoma. I'd like to see PJ Adebaware make that big time jump and he starts eating some of those snaps away. And Ethan Downs continues to do what Ethan Downs has done. You've brought in Woolard out of the portal as well to mix into that competition. So, and then you went and, you signed a couple of talented guys that you hope can come in and impact things straight away. So I don't even know if Trace Ford's somebody that we look at and say, okay, he's going to get 335 defensive snaps again this coming season. But if he can give you 100 productive snaps, you're going to take that veteran experience right back.
Yeah. And so he was 4th on the team in pass rush win rate among your defensive ends, behind Rondo Bothroyd and PJ Adebaware and Reggie Grimes. Reggie Grimes went to the transfer portal. He's gone. So you have a guy that can win on the pass rush. And again, he might play a lot of snaps. He might not. We'll see. But again, it's a veteran piece, and getting somebody to come back that has played a lot of football and has options out there. He could transfer again and be productive for somebody out there, but he comes back to Oklahoma and at the very least is satisfied in the role that he played this year and hopes to earn more going into his second year. We've seen how players in their second year in Brent Venables' defense have made a jump, whether it's Danny Stutzman or Billy Bowman or Robert Spears Jennings, some of the younger guys as well, making that. Kip Lewis is another one, making that jump in year 2. How much better could Trace Ford potentially be in a second year in Brent Venables' defense? I cannot wait to find out. We have a national champion The Michigan Wolverines beat the Washington Huskies. Let's talk about what we learned from the national championship and how it might apply to the Oklahoma Sooners coming up next after the break here on Locked On Sooners.
Today's episode brought to us by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL regular season, well, it is sayonara. It's over, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel for the NFL playoffs. That's America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, such as live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. For those of you, again, that are new customers out there, that'll make it easy to find some different options on what maybe you want to wager on. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. That's the best way to find popular parlays and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
The Michigan Wolverines beat the Washington Huskies in what was a pretty close game for most of the contest. And then Michigan pulls away late after some Michael Penix interceptions and just the inability of the receivers to create much separation. But Josh, let's start here. What did you learn from this game that you feel like you can apply to the Oklahoma Sooners moving forward in their pursuit of winning a national championship?
Well, number one, droughts come to a close. As we've seen recently with Georgia and Michigan, each have broken in the last several seasons substantial droughts. So there is hope. There is a glimmer of hope out there, Oklahoma fans. These things do happen, and Oklahoma can make it happen. So that would be number one, is the 26-year drought for Michigan is over. Congratulations to the Wolverines. The other thing would be, as typically typifies these games and how national champions are won, I don't think Michigan. Now, JJ McCarthy played a fine game. He made some big time throws, did what was asked of him within the offense. But Michigan did not win this game because JJ McCarthy was a substantially better quarterback than Michael Penix Jr. Maybe in the game he played arguably a little bit better, but I really think it was the sum of the parts for Michigan. It was the fact that, guess what? Defensively, it was pretty tough, pretty stingy to run on Michigan. Meanwhile, for Washington, that run defense that has been problematic for the Huskies, and that run offense that's been dominant for Michigan, that was one of the big keys to the game. Is early Edwards got off and running a couple of times. Corum broke a couple of big runs, and it was effective for Michigan, and it wasn't for Washington. So that put, again, a lot of stress on the quarterback, Michael Penix, to go make plays, and he just simply wasn't as magical as he was versus Texas. He didn't make the same throws that he made.
I think we've learned in the college football playoff era that you don't have to have the best quarterback to win a national championship, whether it's, the Alabama years, or it's, obviously we've seen Joe Burrow, we've seen Mac Jones, we've seen Bryce Young. No, they were some of the better quarterbacks their years, but we've also seen, guys like JJ McCarthy, guys like, now the Georgia quarterback is blanking.
Stetson Bennett.
Thank you. Stetson Bennett. I wanted to call him Sherling something. I don't know why that was coming to my head. Stetson Bennett. Thank you. We've seen Stetson Bennett win national titles. Yes, Oklahoma's got a very, very talented quarterback, but they've got to improve the talent across the roster, across the board. It's got to get better, especially in the trenches. That's the other thing that we've learned. The teams with the best offensive lines generally are the teams that win these national titles. So Oklahoma, Bill Bedenbaugh, you got to keep building your offensive line, and you got to, find some stars, not just good players, not just kind of solid players. As much as I'm excited about what they've brought in the transfer portal and the 2024 recruiting class, you got to keep building. You got to keep adding. You cannot slow down. You cannot have a year off, and you can't miss on some of these, prospects that Oklahoma's had over the years, whether it was a Nate Anderson or a Bray Walker, or, some of these other guys, Aaron Parks, Marcus Hicks. Like, there were a lot of guys that just didn't work out with Oklahoma. And I think it kept the offensive line from reaching the status it needs to for Oklahoma to be a contender. But otherwise, your quarterback can be great, But if your quarterback's not on that day, or if the defense that you're facing is making things really, really difficult for your quarterback, you got to have other avenues to find success. And Washington really didn't have that. When Michael Penix dropped back to pass, he just was off target. He was not his normal accurate self. And honestly, the wide receivers for Washington, they just didn't look like they were as into the game as Michigan's defensive backs. It looked like the physicality from Michigan's defensive backs really got into the head of Washington's wide receivers, and they either just stopped running routes when Penix was putting the ball down the field, or couldn't hold on to the ball after the catch, and contact knocked it loose, or were just making drops. It was just a really uncharacteristic game for the Washington wide receivers. And that's why it's important to have such a quote unquote dog mentality at the wide receiver position, because you got to be able to take on the physicality of the opposing cornerbacks and safeties and hold on to the football when it's thrown your way, or to fight through contact at the top of your route. That matters. As great as Washington's wide receivers were, they did not fight through contact from Michigan's defensive backs very well, especially late in that second half when Washington's trying to mount a comeback. It just seemed like Michigan's corners were just in their heads. Every little tug just threw them off, and they weren't able to sustain their momentum on their route, and it completely messed everything up in the timing of the offense.
It shows us again too, and this is not a revolutionary thought, but this game, Washington on the fourth down play, they've got a touchdown to Rome Odunze and Michael Penix Jr. If Odunze initially the route said, hey, it's a go and we're staying inside or right near the hash, Penix Jr. throws it outside toward the boundary, and they're just not on the same page. It was a fourth down play. It's a touchdown. That's one that they beat Michigan on, but they don't make the play in the moment. That's how fine the margins are in these kind of games. And then obviously that sets the tone for the rest of this thing, where you just couldn't get quite over the hump if you were Washington in this game. There were plays to be made. They didn't make them. And a lot of that, though, was because Michigan was just flat out better, top to bottom, and in particular, defensively, they were better. The other thing I think that we learned from this, John, and really from last year's national championship game as well, is now TCU final score, not beautiful, okay? But there's multiple pathways to the national championship game. So DeBoer happened very, very quickly for DeBoer in Washington. It wasn't done with a number of top 5, top 10 recruiting classes. They went and got an impact transfer quarterback, some other impact transfer pieces, orchestrated a magical season to the national championship game. Michigan, I mean, here's a coach in Jim Harbaugh that me, a bunch of people were talking about, is he going to still be Michigan's head football coach? Until, of course, 3 years ago, they finally break through. They beat Ohio State. They win a Big Ten championship, and they've done it every single year since. And they just build and they build. And there were some question marks along the way of, are they going to be able to do this thing? But they stayed the course. And scandal, whatever aside, John, they stayed the course when it looked like maybe Harbaugh wasn't the right guy, couldn't beat his rival, XYZ's not going right. And now tonight they're rewarded. So I take that to say, okay, you call it sunshine pumping if you want, but if you stay the course with Brent Venables, there could be that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So you can't get caught up in each little individual negative. You gotta trust that this thing is being built the right way, because, hey, to Michigan's credit, at times I thought, man, I think they're making a big mistake with Harbaugh here, the lifetime contract and on and on and on. And yet, you know what? There was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
That's right. And Jim Harbaugh often was in discussion to get NFL jobs along the way too. And for some reason, that distraction never kept Michigan from continuing to build their roster and create really good teams and contend. And here they are. They're the national champions. Now you might throw an asterisk by it if you want to. I can totally understand that. I might, but they've got their national title, and the patience paid off. And so as Oklahoma continues to build and they continue to contend or try to get into contention, okay, if they don't reach the college football playoff next year, don't completely throw everything out the window. There've been a lot of really positive things that Brent Venables and his staff have done this year and even last year, especially on the recruiting cycle or the recruiting trail, that you have a lot to feel positive about. Obviously, the results are going to matter. You got to get the results, but patience is paying off. And I think it will eventually pay off for the Oklahoma Sooners as well. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners wherever you social media. But until next time, he's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.